Episode 113 of the Toadstool Boardroom for the week of November 6th, 2024. I'm Logan Plant, joined as always this week by Justin Corice.
Hey, Logan.
And Chris Shriver.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, so obviously there's a bit of a dark cloud hanging over us this week. I'm sure you can all imagine why, but we're not going to talk about that here. We're going to try and be an escape and have a fun Nintendo conversation because Dark Cloud is a PlayStation franchise, so we don't need to talk about that at all. Let's get in. Sorry, I thought of that like 20 minutes ago and I was ready to go. But yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about this week. We're going to talk about my favorite topic in the world, Nintendo financials are out. We're going to talk about not my favorite topic in the world, Mario and Luigi Brothership. Justin reviewed a game that's on Nintendo Switch that he's going to tell us about, and we will hit your EGADS emails. But let's get into it first. You know, I'm shaking up the order on you guys on our run of show. I want to start with Mario and Luigi Brothership. I want to lead off with the new first-party release this week. I reviewed it over at IGN. You probably
sure did.
Know by now. I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Sure did.
Mediocre. I really didn't like this game, and yeah, it's been a firestorm on the internet since the 5 out of 10. But we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about the game itself.
Whoa.
So yeah, I just want to kick it off with some questions from you guys. Justin, what do you want to know about Mario and Luigi Brothership?
So broad strokes, you gave it a 5. You called it mediocre. Yep. What is your biggest disappointment? What was the big thing, if there was a single big thing that really held it back from other Mario RPGs?
It's so boring. That is really the easiest blanket statement you can make. This game is dreadfully boring, and it's a bummer because it makes so many changes from the Mario and Luigi series that I love. Just on every level, I feel like Brothership fundamentally misunderstands what makes a great Mario and Luigi game. And I'm fine with changes. I think it is often good when series evolve and change. And we talk about that all the time. But here, every change is for the worse. I don't think there's a single change in Brothership they made that actively improves the game, apart from one cool new thing they added to the battle system, which we can get into in a bit. But the overworld exploration is just a slog, and if you've played a Mario and Luigi game before, then you know that you have equal control over Mario and Luigi. They are a tandem pair that you are controlling. Like when you're jumping upstairs, you hit A to jump as Mario, B to jump as Luigi. Luigi's following tightly behind Mario, and they are one kind of group that you're controlling at the same time. But in Brothership, it's completely different, and Luigi follows like 5 steps behind Mario. You're not really controlling him anymore. You can still hit B to jump as him in the overworld, but it will hurt you more than it will ever help you. Like if you're trying to jump across a gap as both Mario and Luigi, Mario jumps, and then initially, because of muscle memory of playing this entire series, right, I'm hitting B to jump as Luigi, and he just like stands and jumps in place and then walks into the pit that I was trying to get over. And it's like, why is he doing that? So, and then eventually you just really get used to only controlling Mario, and Luigi's basically following you like a partner in Paper Mario, where you're not controlling him at all. And it's a bummer, and it just feels really watered down and shallow. And that same kind of philosophy change completely plays into all the puzzle solving too. The puzzles in this game are completely miserable because Luigi, you're not controlling him anymore, like I was talking about. In Superstar Saga, I was just playing it earlier today to just get a feel for it again. And there's these puzzles where you use your hammer to knock Luigi into the ground like he's a drill. Then Luigi goes under a grate, he pops up, and then you're on the other side of the grate, solving puzzles as Luigi, flipping switches, hitting blocks, doing whatever you need to do. You hit Y to seamlessly switch back and forth between Mario and Luigi to do their different sides of the puzzle. But in Brothership, you just hit L and Luigi just does it for you. Like, though, there's a thing Luigi needs to go do, tap L, and then you just watch him do it. And even with that change, the puzzle design here is so basic and so boring. And I wasn't stumped once, and it would never let me even be stumped, even if there was a tough puzzle, because this is probably the most over-tutorialized Nintendo game I've played this year, which I know is a big negative for Justin specifically. It never shuts up. It talks and talks and talks. And there's a scene in my review, if you go and watch the video review on IGN, where I say anytime you walk into a new area, the game does this. And it pans to your exit of the room. It pans and shows you the whole puzzle. And it takes anywhere between 15 seconds and a minute to do this, depending on the instance. And then your new assistant Snoutlet, who's not a pig, you'll hear that 30 times if you play this game, pops out of Luigi's hat and says, oh, looks like we need to push the ice block so we can platform across. Do you know how to do that? Go and hit it with your hammer. And it's just like, let me play the game. And I get it's for younger kids, but let me turn that off. And that's been a complaint about this series for multiple entries since it started to go downhill with Dream Team and then Paper Jam. And they just, it's like this game drops everything I loved about Mario and Luigi and keeps every bad habit. And you're left with this just mediocre 35-hour game that just never gets going. And yeah, just so disappointed with it.
For the PlayStation fans out there, I mean, it sounds like, imagine Atreus telling you the solution to the puzzle in God of War Ragnarok, but you have to read it instead of actually hearing dialogue. So it just takes longer. Yeah.
And then Atreus solves it for you. Yeah.
Right.
He does it.
Right. You press L and Atreus does the puzzle.
Does the thing. You watch him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that's just boring, right? That and that's just one facet. And there's these different puzzle types, a couple of which I called out in my review and a couple of which I didn't, where it's classic Mario and Luigi stuff. Mario platforms on the red ones, Luigi platforms on the green ones. And those puzzles have always been in Mario and Luigi, and they're still in this game, but now you don't do half of it. And so they come up with this new system of how Luigi's going to function in Brothership, and then they build nothing around it. So you're playing old school style Mario and Luigi puzzles with this new watered down version of Control, and it just bugged the heck out of me, man. It's like, why is this here? It's so poorly thought out. And then there's these instances where you step on a switch and 500 coins will appear in the area. And it says, okay, Mario and Luigi are going to compete to see who can grab the most coins. And then you just control Mario and grab coins. And then Luigi is grabbing coins as an NPC. And then at the end, they tally up who grabbed more coins between you. And then whichever brother did just like gives a thumbs up to the camera. What's the point of that? I'm competing against an NPC and I get all the coins either way. It's just pointless. It's utterly pointless. And there's so many examples of these puzzle types that just keep rearing their head throughout the 34-hour campaign, like I said, that never evolve, never get any better. And it's a slog to play. It's such a chore. And I'd forgive it if I liked anything else about this game. But I don't. The story is so boring and so chatty and so childish and simple. And I know people are going to play this and say, oh, this is the darkest a Mario game's ever been. Because it does go to some dark places. One, dark does not equal good. I think is a very common misconception. I think, oh, it's so dark. Case in point, Emio the Smiling Man. Just because it's dark doesn't mean it's good. That story's bad. Sorry. And two, they just say the same crap over and over and over. There's one clip I put in my review too that I just can't even believe is real, where you just beat a boss and Snoutlet says in back-to-back text bubbles, oh, we need to go to the Great Lighthouse to connect it to the ship. Let's head over to the Great Lighthouse so we can get it connected. Like, why did you just say that in back-to-back text bubbles? It's so handholdy and absurd. And then the locations are generic. It's Fireland. It's Iceland. It's Desertland. It never goes beyond that. There's not comparing it to Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, where you're competing in a WWE wrestling ring on a floating island in the sky. There's nothing that even sniffs that here. It's just so basic. It's new Super Mario and Luigi is how I would describe it. It's so painfully generic, and then it runs like crap. It is one of the worst performing Nintendo games of the year, one of the worst on Switch. It's not as bad as like Scarlet and Violet, which was a disaster, but you're always in a stutter, recovering from a stutter, or expecting the next one. And that's just your life with this game. And all that mixed together just created this experience that if I weren't reviewing it, I wouldn't have played it. And you guys know me. I play everything they put out, and I would have put this one down at about the 10-hour mark.
So I'm curious. A lot of times when you review a mediocre game, sometimes you can there's good bones in here. You can see they didn't come together, it didn't work. It doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case here. So let's say, you stripped out bloat, excess time wasted, and it ran well. Like, is there something redeeming in here anywhere? Like, what's who is this for?
I don't know who it's for. I legitimately don't, but I will say the silver lining is the combat. The combat's a ton of fun. It's really good. It's really flashy. I love how Mario and Luigi look and animate in the combat sequences. Mario and Luigi sets itself apart from something like Paper Mario because of how you counter enemies and you memorize their patterns and you figure out how to deal really powerful counterattacks to them by reading what they're doing. Oh, he lifted his left foot here, so I know he's going to charge at Mario, so you whip out your hammer and whack him as he gets close to you. There's really cool stuff like that. There's dozens and dozens of enemies. Enemy variety is really, really good for the most part in this game, and you're learning all of their different patterns, and you're filing it away, so when they show up and you see, okay, I got 2 spikes here, and I got this little plug enemy, and I got these things, I know what they're going to do. So that's really, really fun. The bros attacks are really fun. Kicking a green shell back and forth between Mario and Luigi and then nailing it at the whole line of enemies is super satisfying. And there's some really, really cool bros attacks in here. So, and the game runs well in combat. There's a couple really powerful attacks where, like ultimates, where when they're taking place, the frame rate becomes unstable. But at that point, you've already pressed all your inputs, so it's not actually impacting your gameplay. It's just kind of the showy finish that chugs a little bit. But for the most part, I was always happy when I'm in a battle. Until the last 10 hours, because the game's way too long, and I even was getting sick of the combat by the end, so that kind of took that big bright spot away. If this game was 10 hours shorter, I would have scored it higher. I feel comfortable saying that. I was around a 6, and then it just kept going and going and going with one of the worst final acts I've ever played in a Nintendo game. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, and I'm not one who thinks you need to use superlatives to get a point across in a review or something, but I legitimately believe the last 10 hours of this game is some of the most disrespected I've ever felt playing a video game. Without spoilers, because some people are still going to play this game, and I don't want to spoil it for them, but you revisit places you've already been, you do nothing new, and it just runs you in circles for hours and hours and hours. It's worse than like the Triforce Hunt in the Wind Waker. It's worse than any backtracking I've pretty much ever had to do. It's
worse
painful.
Worse than Metroid Prime?
Yeah,
I guess Metroid Prime isn't that long. Like, depending on how much you get, but
yeah, no, it's worse than Metroid Prime. Yeah, it's disrespectful of your time, and I don't recommend that you play it. Every reviewer is entitled to their opinion, obviously, but I'll just say I was shocked by some of the higher scores out there because I'm reading them and I'm like, wow, it sounds like we played different games. And sure, some people probably just clicked with it more, and you guys know me. I'm saying some of the things that I can't put up with in games. I hate over chattiness. I hate over tutorialization, and I hate games that go on too long. And this had all 3. It was 3 strikes.
Checking all the boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever play? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Did you ever play Persona 5 Royal or Persona 5?
No, I haven't played Persona 5.
I love both of those games.
Okay. So, well, I mean, Justin, you could probably speak to this a little bit. So, like, there are moments in Persona 5, especially where they will, like, regroup after you're in a dungeon, and they're like, oh my gosh, that guy was so terrible. Or, like, you're about to go into a dungeon, and they're like, that guy's so terrible. We have to go get that guy because he's so terrible. Can you believe how terrible he is? Wow, he's so terrible. Like, it sounds like that's what a lot... This game has a lot of that, or has that, like, kind of in spades. Like, do you think if they were just a little less overly verbose, maybe it would be a little bit more palatable? Or does everything else around it is still so insulting?
Yeah, right? It really is. And it's hard to say because it's not just one thing. Like you're saying,
right.
Everywhere you look, it's something I didn't like. It's generic worlds. It's chatty, boring story. It's terrible performance. You can't just fix one of those and have a good game. You'd have to fix 2 or 3 of them to crawl up to a game that I would recommend you spend your time and money on. But it's just everywhere here. They just missed the mark. And I didn't even talk about the sailing aspect of this thing yet. It's so boring. You just open a mini map and a map menu. You just click which current you want to sail to next. It's these connected linear pathways, just kind of this labyrinthian ocean map. And then it's not like Wind Waker or Origami King where you're sailing this boat and you see something and you can veer off to it, stop by, see what happens. It's you're on a cruise ship and you're waiting to pull into your next port. And it's so boring. Why is that here? And I just kept finding myself asking, why is it like this in this game so many times? And I didn't even like it in the beginning. I was so psyched to have Mario and Luigi back. And the first 2 hours, I knew I was in for a rough ride because it just starts rough, never gets any better, and then actively gets worse by the end. It sucks. I'm so disappointed. I played Mario RPG last year, really enjoyed it, loved Thousand Year Door, played Superstar Saga to get ready for this one, and was so psyched to jump in. So all the people that are upset about this score out there, I'm upset too. I'm bummed that this is what it turned out to be. You guys know I love Mario and Luigi, so it's just big bummer.
Should we tell them what you told me before this show started?
What did I say?
About you started playing Superstar Saga.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what I said.
You said, well, now having played Superstar Saga again this close.
Oh, no, we
game,
shouldn't say that. No.
Okay.
We won't.
I'll say this though. I mean, if you're somebody who maybe you're excited about this game or you've never gotten into the Mario and Luigi games, like Superstar Saga, if you are an NSO member, is available on there.
Yes.
And it is arguably one of the best ones of the series. So
yes,
like dive in. If you're, I mean, I don't even know if I'd say if you're on the fence with this. Maybe if you want to check it out. But like my copy, I said to Logan before we started recording, my copy's showing up this week, and I got the tracking number showed up and everything, and like the email popped, and I was just like, okay. Like, I'm not even excited for it anymore, which is a shame. Like, but I do have to take the W here and say Chris was right, because when this got announced, I asked the question, who is this for?
Yeah, no, you said who wanted
asking,
this. So
who wanted this? Who's asking for this? Yeah.
I was
who
asking for
this?
Mario and Luigi. I was not asking for this iteration of it. And
Kong
you can just
girls.
Yeah, exactly. You can just
Exactly.
see in every way that this is not Alpha Dream. You just really can. And it's another example of, so this is why Nintendo didn't tell us who's making this. Because it's not a good answer. And no shade to the folks at Acquire who made this thing. This is easily the biggest project they've tackled, right? Taking on a game for Nintendo is no joke. That's a big undertaking. It was their first shot at it. And I feel like how I felt with Mario Party 9. This is recognizable as something I used to love, but there's nothing here that I love anymore. And we saw it took ND Cube the better part of 20 years? No, like 15 years to make Mario parties that live up to what they used to look like. And I don't want to go down that road again with Mario and Luigi. How I felt when I was watching the credits roll was seriously, wow, I don't think I ever need this series to come back again. I think it might be better off in the past. And
that's what I was going to say.
Way to feel.
I don't know that like they'll.
Style.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they'll get another, depending on how it sells, that they'll get another chance at it. Like the only hope that I think it has is that it's a Mario game coming out in the holidays. And maybe it's not entirely clear to the average consumer that it is an RPG. But like, there's a very good chance that maybe this is it. If your review swayed that many people, or if that people are not hot on it, I don't know. Like sales numbers on this are going to be interesting.
I think it'll sell at least 1 million copies. I think that a Mario game on Switch will have at least a 1% attach rate. So
in November,
at least a 1.4 million copies is probably my floor for it.
Which is a point that I wanted to bring up that just bums me out, is that we're going to talk more in depth about Nintendo's financials next, but the Thousand Year Door remake hasn't cracked 2 million yet. It has outsold the original GameCube version, but it has not reached Origami King numbers or Super Mario RPG numbers. Super Mario RPG came out during the holidays, and the Origami King came out when everyone was quarantining, and the Thousand Year Door came out in the spring and isn't even going to have a holiday season to itself where it's the newest Mario RPG. And it being leagues better than this game, it just bums me out that Brothership's probably going to outsell Thousand Year Door. So I'm trying to kind of end all my discussions about Brothership on more of a positive note, saying, hey, if you're disappointed about how this one has turned out, in my opinion, again, others out there are much higher on it, but if you're maybe second guessing and you haven't played Thousand Year Door, go play that. Go play Super Mario RPG. but I'm specifically banging the drum for Thousand Year Door because more of you have played Mario RPG. The numbers tell us that, and they're both just great. And I just hope that Nintendo, I mean, they're smart, but I don't want them to just look at the sales numbers in a vacuum for these things and say, oh, people really didn't want Thousand Year Door, because it's not the case. We did. And a lot of us showed up, but I just want more of us to show up for it. And yeah, Brothership just ain't it.
It would be interesting to see in like alternate universe, right? Like where Thousand Year Door comes out in November and this came out in May.
Yeah.
Like what do those sales numbers end up looking like? Because even when Thousand Year Door came out, we were like, man, like Super Mario RPG came out 6 months ago. Like we're just not. Are we even ready? But that was the discussion we had at that time. Was like, are we even ready for this game yet? And then a month later, they come out with this, and they're like, yeah, this is coming out at the end of the year. We're like, Jesus, like this is a lot of Mario RPGs in a 12-month span, 13-month span.
And to that point, some people have asked me, do you think you were burned out on them, and that's why this one didn't sit with you? No, if this one had come out first in this trilogy of RPG, the RPG Renaissance, I would have felt the same about it. It's just not a good time. I probably would have liked Super Mario RPG even more than I did if I played that one after this one, is honestly. Yeah.
You know what? If Super Mario RPG sells the best of the bunch and it gets a sequel, don't hate it.
I'm not going to be upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't hate that either. You guys just know I'm a TTYD truther. I adore that game. And yeah, so anything else on this one, guys? Any other questions, or should we move on?
Here's my last one. And I think you might have made a playlist for this. If you had to rank the Mario RPGs, can you give us a quick rundown?
Yes, I did make a playlist for this. It's embedded in my review, and it was actually kind of cool because amid the storm of hate that this review got, a lot of people on Reddit and Twitter were saying, wait, this guy actually has played them all, and he ranked them all, and his ranking's really good, so maybe he's on to something. So that felt like a big win for IGN Playlist. So yeah, shout out to that. But I'm just pulling it up here. It was in, I think Chris reshuffled all our channels in Discord in the ever-changing fight.
I'm sorry.
It is a running joke at this point what crimes Chris perpetrates on our channels.
That's looking good.
I got a lot of compliments on the channel organization at Discord.
No, it's looking good.
I got rid of the golf one.
Streamlined nicely.
Thank you.
Yeah. This ranking includes all of the Mario RPGs, all of the Paper Marios, and the Super Mario RPG remake. And here it is. I'll count it down. I'll count it down the whole way. Number 1 is Thousand Year Door. Number 2 is Bowser's Inside Story, so that's my favorite Mario and Luigi. Number 3 is the original Paper Mario. Number 4 is Superstar Saga, so the two that kicked off their respective side series. 5 is Origami King. That game is just... I hate the battle system, but the rest of it's amazing. So it's the opposite of Brothership, which I didn't really put together until this moment. 6, Super Mario RPG. Really solid game. I really holds up even without nostalgia. I would say that's like the top shelf. Then number 7 is Partners in Time. Number 8, Super Paper Mario. Number 9, Color Splash. You can tell we're getting down into the weeds here. I like Color Splash more than most, though. That game had some good stuff about it. Number 10 is Dream Team. That game took 40 hours and is the chattiest of all of them. Then number 11 is Brothership. Brothership is only beating out Mario and Luigi Paper Jam, which just felt phoned in from start to finish. I don't think they even wanted to make that game. They were trying to save their studio at that point in time. I'm serious. There's there's a video essay out there on YouTube. I can't remember the creator's name, but basically it breaks down a bunch of text that you can find by talking to NPCs in Paper Jam, and they're basically saying like, "Why are we even here? We don't even want to do this. Why are we doing this for a sixth time?"
Oh my god!
Wow, it's crazy. I don't think they wanted to make that game, and it shows.
Wow.
And then last place is Sticker Star. That game's awful. That game is terrible by all accounts. So, yeah, this only beat out the 2 that I think are actively bad. Otherwise, it's the bottom. Yeah, and guys, did either of you see? So I don't want to harp on the hate too much, but some people out there were saying, this is the guy who gave Sticker Star an 8. I was like 14 years old when Sticker Star came out. You think I was reviewing it for IGN? Yeah, come on. Yeah. So that's Brothership. Really bummed out with it. Yeah, play Superstar Saga on NSO, play Thousand Year Door, play Mario RPG. There's no shortage of great Mario RPGs to play on Nintendo Switch, and this just is not one of them. But let's move on now and talk about the Nintendo financial report for this quarter that came out earlier this week, with the big headline being Nintendo turning to their Japanese Twitter account, which they're serious when they do that, and sharing that Nintendo Switch software will be playable on the successor to Nintendo Switch. So we got backwards compatibility confirmed. Came in a very stressful time for us all paying attention to something very different. And it was like, I don't know how to absorb this information right now, but I guess I'm glad that we have it. But this was a little interesting nugget that I think a lot of people skipped over, which said, this was in the presentation. You had to go into the investor relations part of Nintendo.com, the Japanese website, to find this, which I do every 3 months. And they said, in addition to being able to play Nintendo Switch software they currently own, consumers will be able to choose their next purchase from a broad selection of titles released for Nintendo Switch. So we don't know the details yet, but that's sounding like, hey, the eShop's coming over. You're still going to be able to buy these games on the Switch successor, like a PS4 to PS5 type thing. Justin, is that your reading on it?
Yeah, that's exactly my reading. I saw a couple of breakdowns. I think like Wario64 had a breakdown too, which is a great follow on whatever platform you use nowadays. And that's exactly it. It seems like it's very similar to the Xbox experience, which is it's basically the same storefront. You buy the same stuff there. It's just you have access to the most recent consoles titles as well, which is frankly best case scenario. So if ever there was a day for a quick, this is for Hokawa message.
Yeah,
I love it. It was
Shriver, why are you shaking your head?
That's not what this says. That's not how I'm reading this.
Okay, how are you reading it?
I think the wording here is very deliberate, and it's very purposely deliberate. In addition to being able to play Nintendo Switch software they currently own, consumers will be able to choose their next purchase from a broad selection of titles. If it were all titles, it would say all titles. A broad selection to me means Nintendo first party, selective third party, anybody that, like, I'm assuming it's like an opt-in thing for developers.
Yeah.
Think about how much shovelware is on the Switch eShop today that I bet won't make it over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that doesn't change my opinion about this at all, because I think that's absolutely
it doesn't.
right.
It's just I don't think it's everything.
No, and it never is. Like Xbox is not everything.
Right.
PlayStation is not everything, and it's a combination of like you do typically need to do some work to make it work on the new platform. There's also things like licensing deals, especially with things like licensed music that aren't into perpetuity forever on a new platform. So like there isn't a scenario where it's everything. Like that's not a thing that I think could have reasonably been expected.
Yeah, I could see it both ways. I could also see broad just being them using positive language to tell their shareholders, hey, there's going to be a ton of games on this thing from day one. They're old games, but it's such a broad selection.
I could see it both ways. Just like our broad selection of music in our app.
Yeah. Hey, we got a couple new games this week. We got Donkey Kong Country 2, Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
That might need to become a recurring segment, because like I could very much see that just as a side being like, remember like a Guitar Hero when in its heyday and every week was new tracks? Like,
yeah, it was the best.
I could see that being the case for a while.
Yeah, Chris, I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, it does say a broad selection. We'll see what it means, but either way, I do think it's cool that this is really the first time they've done that, because you could buy DSiWare on 3DS, you could buy WiiWare on Wii U, but they didn't sell full retail titles on either of those storefronts on the DS and the Wii generation. That didn't start until 3DS and Wii U, and then Switch, unless it was a port of a Wii U or a 3DS game, there was no way to buy those. So this will be the first time that they are doing this more iterative carryover where a lot of the shop, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it will be available. And I think that's great. I think that's a really good thing. And going back to last week, it makes me ever more confident that the name will have Switch in it. I really think it's going to, especially from this next point where from their financials, they said Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the Nintendo Switch successor. It's time to rename this thing. We talked about it before, but you need a Switch Online account to access Nintendo Music on your smartphone. It doesn't make sense anymore. It's time for a rebrand.
Nintendo Online, baby.
Yeah, just call it that.
Yeah, but just the way that they talked about it in their financials. I'm reading between the lines and thinking that this next console is going to have Switch in the name.
You can't call it Nintendo Online
Well, not the
because
console.
people will call it no.
That's true. That's true.
Oh yeah, especially like for every title that doesn't come across like, hey
Yeah.
Nintendo, can I play this? No. Oh, cool.
No.
Yeah, they got to come up with some
You know
other
what?
name though.
As long as they bring along Suika game, we know Chris will be happy.
That's
true.
right, baby. Let me drop
Was
that
that
fruit.
this year or was that last year?
That was last year. I was playing that.
Okay.
James was like just born. That child
Okay.
laid upon my chest as I dropped the fruit from the sky.
Nice.
Now he's too big for that.
To drop fruit from the sky or to lay on your chest?
To lay on my chest.
Okay. So
I mean,
yeah,
he could, but I
NSO.
would fall asleep.
Yeah. Don't you do that all the time anyways? Okay, anyways, NSO is available on the Switch successor, and they talked a little bit about some of their subscription numbers. There's 34 million Switch Online members, and that is down year over year from this time last year. There are 366 million Nintendo accounts with 127 million people playing their Switch annually. So Switch Online is down. They said it's because there's not a ton of software right now that is making people re-up their subscriptions. Yeah, there's something like Mario Party Jamboree, but that's not as much of an online game to people as something like Splatoon 3 is, for example, which is now done. So, yeah, Chris, you concerned about these numbers declining at all as we look at the next generation, or no?
No, they just don't have anything like of any substance here. So, like the only reason we're locked in is because of like who we are as Nintendo fans.
Yes.
Like they're just, you know, I'm gonna keep hemorrhaging money to Nintendo till the day I die. But it's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
But like the average consumer, that, you know, maybe they're playing Mario Kart, maybe they're playing Splatoon, like they're gonna subscribe for the 3 months that they're playing that game or the year that they're playing that game as like new content is being dropped. And then once they're out, they're out. Like we've had a steady stream of single player content. And unless you're into being subscribed to expansion pass and like NSO emulated games, like what is here for you? Probably not much.
Music.
Except for
on
the
your phone.
Nintendo Music app.
Donkey Kong 2 music.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be real with me. Have either of you guys used Nintendo Music in the last 7 days?
No.
No.
But you know what's funny though? Almost every day I've sat at my computer and gone, oh man, I wish there was an app on here. And then I'm like, maybe I'll have my phone. And I'm like, it's too much effort. And then I just go on Spotify.
Yeah, and I will say I've thought about it, especially on drives where it's like, do I have a podcast? Okay, I do. Cool. Like, and if not, I would have put it on because I do still stand by the fact that I think it's pretty cool. I also, frankly, just haven't worked out a whole lot in the past week. So
Okay. Yeah. We should try and be the exclusive podcast available on the Nintendo Music app. Listen to Toadstool Boardroom
How
on
funny would that
Spotify.
be?
and
call Doug
Nintendo
Bowser right
Music
now.
app.
They would never let us on. I talk about piracy way too much.
It's true. Yeah, they wouldn't. We'd become like the Nintendo Power podcast where you can't really say anything that you
Can't say
actually personally think.
anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, some other numbers here. Switch is at 146 million units. They lowered their forecast by a couple million, by 1 million for this fiscal year. They're expecting to sell 12.5 million. And software sales haven't been as hot either. However, they did cross 1.3 billion pieces of software, which is a new record for a Nintendo platform. So the most games they've ever sold has been on Nintendo Switch, which, I mean, yeah, it's awesome. Not surprising, though. It's the only time ever they've only had one console since the NES. So it's, yeah, they're not split, which they talked about a lot in this report, actually, Justin. And they credited so much of their success to merging the two branches like we've been talking about for years.
Yeah, I think if anything, long term, it was in their benefit for there to be two tracks that can grow separately and then smash them together into one Voltron of financial success for their console. And so I think that's also going to be frankly impossible for other people to replicate, which is fairly Nintendo.
Yeah, and it'll be impossible for them to replicate too.
Yeah,
probably.
100%.
It's not going to happen. I don't think Switch 2 is going to be a failure by any means, but I don't think it's going to hit these numbers.
No, I mean, it's like every time you see somebody set the world record in something, you're like, okay, well, that's the most that's ever happened, and they're going to sell the most consoles ever. So it's like,
yeah, it's gonna happen.
It's also like, oh, you're not the single greatest of all time. You're a failure. No, it's like we have some context here. That being said, like I think that the fact that this console has been around for as long as it has, I absolutely feel like there's a lot of excitement and demand for whatever comes next. So as long as they can meet supply, though, I think it is going to sell like gangbusters. There is one number I do want to highlight real quick, because we were talking. You mentioned that they revised their forecast down for the end of the year, which sounds like bad news. But remember, they revised their forecast up repeatedly throughout the year. So it's not as though in the landscape of 2024, they're like, oh man, we kind of blew it. No, they kept actually like, oh, it's more. Yeah. Okay, go back down to less more. And that's really where they ended up.
Yeah. And again, they're not doing bad. This is a console in its 8th year that they still sold 1 million of. They sold 2 million copies of Mario Kart in the last 3 months. What's like going on? So
12 million is a good year for any console. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. And then there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, they credited the gold Hyrule Switch Lite for boosting Switch sales this quarter, too. So apparently a lot of people bought
Shocker.
That. Right. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Water is wet.
Yeah. I'm not going to make that joke. Okay, so moving on to some franchise highlights that they made. Pokemon has hit 99 million units sold on Switch, so it will cross 100 million units, which is bonkers. And then something we really should talk about on this show, but I don't think any of us are playing it, is Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is popping off right now in the Pokemon world as well. Although I could see Chris playing that. Are you?
No.
Okay.
I think if I had an iPad, I would be.
Yeah.
I hate playing games on my phone. I do. I like, because I feel, I don't know why this doesn't make any sense. I feel very silly holding my phone and staring at a very tiny screen and being like zeroed in for that long. But then like hand me a Game Boy and I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do it with a DMG that I can't see. This is great. Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. It doesn't have to. It's okay. Do what you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pokemon huge. And then I want to shout out, Nintendo highlighted 4 growing franchises that have, that, apart from its big 5, which is what I call the big 4 of Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, Splatoon, and then just throw Smash Brothers in there because it's a monster. It's an absolute monster. And the 4 that they shouted out that they said have shown huge growth on Nintendo Switch, it's very exciting. Like, this group of 4 is awesome. It's Pikmin, Kirby, Metroid, and Xenoblade. And they had a slide where they talk about all 4 of these, and they compare the sales numbers of what they've done on Switch to what they did on 3DS plus Wii U, which is like, okay, it's a little weird because what did Metroid have on those systems? You had Samus Returns and Federation Force. And on Switch, you've had 2 of the greatest Metroid games of all time. So, but you had to make those games, so sure, it all checks out. But Chris, I was just psyched to see that these 4 are series that we will see again.
Yeah, no, I was super excited about that. The R&D, unfortunately, it's not on this slide. It's on that financial page that Logan was referring to. They make some comment about the R&D staff having gone up by 1.5 times since 2017. And now I think they're kind of in a space where they're like, okay, we're not necessarily, I don't think they're done hiring, but they're not ramping up as much as they were. And now it's like, okay, we have the bodies and the seats. Now we're trying to build a culture and a group of experienced individuals that are able to develop these games more effectively and more efficiently. Which I think is super exciting for the next generation. Like we said, I think it was literally last week, how crazy it is that the entire Xenoblade series is available on Switch now. Because like Monolith is just like cranking those things out left and right, which is insane to me. Pikmin, same thing. You can play that entire franchise. So like the fact that these studios are in a poised position to say, no, we're pretty well established now at this point. And they're going on a hardware that quite frankly should not be as difficult to develop on as the current gen consoles that are out there today. So I think they have set themselves up beautifully for the next generation.
The one thing I'll add to that is I am so excited that Metroid specifically is on this list.
Yeah.
It honestly it felt like a make or break generation for Metroid, and I think it was also a make or break generation for Advance Wars, and I think that broke.
It broke.
This May.
It broke, yeah.
And we're going to frankly I feel lucky that things worked out, that it feels like this is a franchise they will continue to invest in and continue to be invested in the growth of.
Yeah,
and there was a sorry, real quick. There was a metric that they had presented where it was it's like a bar chart where it's sales in the Wii U and 3DS generation and then the Switch generation. Like that was like the point of comparison. And I didn't realize all of the Metroid games that have released on the 3DS. Granted, it's not like they were stellar games, but they didn't even crack 1 million collectively, along with like Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Wii U, which may have been the only Metroid game on the Wii U, other than like other console re-releases.
But there was no Metroid on the Wii U.
The
so
trilogy I guess that's what
a virtual console release.
But I guess that's what they were including in that statistic. I thought it was interesting that they.
Yeah,
I had on Wii.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's that port, but it was on Wii U, and it was only like $20. So, the fact that they were able to crack 2 million is like amazing. Like I think it does. Like Justin said, it sets them up to be in a position to make more Metroid games like that, the way that we want them to.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to shout out Metroid because it's a special series to the most hardcore of Nintendo fans, right? I think when you ask a lot of Nintendo fans, hey, what's the Nintendo's 3 biggest franchises? They tell you Mario, Zelda, Metroid, right? That's nice shirt, Chris. That Super Nintendo trifecta of Super Metroid, Link to the Past, and Mario World is just legendary. It's still 3 of the greatest games they've ever made, and it just hasn't been that way, right? It's like 3 elementary school best friends that just went in completely different directions. Mario and Zelda just took off, and Metroid just didn't. And I think going into the next gen, this is the first time I've ever felt confident there will be a new 2D Metroid on Switch 2. There just will be. It'll be made by Mercury Steam, and it'll probably be awesome because Metroid Dread has sold 5 million units. It's at 4.99 million. A 2D $60 game? That's incredible. That is a smash hit for what that game is, what that franchise is, and the quality of it and the word of mouth of it. I think it just took off, and that's just so awesome that Dread outsold Prime Remastered. That's huge, even though it is a remaster, and we've talked about how they fumbled that shadow drop a little bit with the delayed physical and no marketing, but still, Dread going to hit 5 million is awesome, and I was hoping for 3 lifetime. It could get double that by the time this is all said and done, and that's so great. That's so great that this is a series that we can count on to return. And then Kirby was huge. Forgotten Lands, the best-selling Kirby game of all time. There's some really good Kirby stuff on Switch. And then Pikmin 4 it's one of the biggest Nintendo games they've ever made. That game's stuffed with things to do, and it's awesome. So, and we talked all about Xenoblade last week. Like, these are 4 franchises that really add a lot of variety to the Nintendo Switch library, and I'm excited that Nintendo sees that and shouted it out and is surely thinking of what can we add to that list. And like we talked about last week, I'm just crossing my fingers. F-Zero is one of them. That's one of the ones they say, hey, we could throw that on here. That could join, or maybe a Star Fox or something like that. So we'll have to see. But surely they want more success stories like this. Okay, a couple other stuff. We talked about Metroid Dread sales numbers, so let's just hit that right now. Zelda Echoes of Wisdom sold 2.58 million copies in 5 days, so that's a huge success for a top-down Zelda game. It's not the 10 million something like Tears of the Kingdom does in 2 days, but for a top-down one, I don't think you could really ask for much more. I think that's really strong.
I've got nothing to add to that. I think even if it is a mainline title, the fact that it isn't a Tears style one, the fact that people recognize that it's not Link on the cover and all those things, like it has frankly a lot of headwinds that it seems to have just completely overcome, and Nintendo should be thrilled.
Yeah, really.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the lifetime sales of that game. It will not
informative.
Yeah, it will not be the story of Breath of the Wild that we've seen, right? Where all of a sudden, Breath of the Wild is almost like the GTA of the Switch, where all of a sudden they sell it for $30 for a week and 1 million more people buy it. I think Echoes of Wisdom had its moment, and I think it's pretty much done. I don't know that people are gonna like go back to that game and be like, oh my god, it was so amazing. Like, I feel like that game had a good 2 weeks before and after its launch, and no one has really been talking about it since then.
I'm with Justin. Holiday, you can't underestimate a game's first holiday. I think it'll be really strong through this Christmas, and then maybe we'll see next quarter how it did, and then maybe that'll be near its ceiling. Yeah, I'm curious to see if it can reach Link's Awakening, which I think is around 6 million. That's a remake, but this is a new game, but do people know that? Something like New Super Mario Bros. U has stomped on Mario Wonder just because it came out a couple years earlier, and one is new and way better, and it's not even close to those numbers. So yeah, we'll see. And then we have Luigi's Mansion 2 HD at 1.57 million. So sure, that was a very low effort thing that they did. Why not sell 1.5 million copies of that? Yeah, that rush job. And then this one surprised me, and I'm wondering if it should have or not. There's been no number reported for Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, which means it hasn't crossed 1 million. Yeah, what do you think of that, Justin?
I'm surprised. I am. I think that there's enough. I thought that there was enough nostalgia. I thought that there was a really cool physical edition. I thought that it was, frankly, not a $60 title. I feel like $1 million was probably like the least I would expect it, and what I would sort of set as my target for them. And it surprises me. It's kind of a bummer that it didn't cross that threshold, because even though the execution wasn't perfect, it was a lot of fun and it was really neat. And I like going back to the remixes they do. I like it when they find clever ways to reintroduce people to their classic games.
Yeah, that's an instance where I was wrong. I thought I was not going to like that game. I was so into it for the first 2 weeks. I loved it. I had so much fun with it. I haven't touched it since I put it down. It's one of those that once I'm done, I'm kind of done with it. But I enjoyed it. And it was $60 for that really cool physical edition. It was $30 digitally. That's really reasonable, I think, for what was on offer there. And yeah, it's just maybe NES nostalgia isn't quite as powerful as they think it is. What do you think, Chris?
No, I completely agree. I mean, when we talked about it, how many times are they going to, like, it's the same conversation that we had before. How many times are they going to repackage Super Mario Brothers for you in a different format? And like, is that appealing enough to people to actually go and pay money for it? I think on NSO, if this were given away for free on NSO, it's a completely different conversation. It would be like the darling, offering that's on there to get people to resubscribe. And I bet you a lot of people would have fallen in love with it. I think the people that picked it up probably did fall in love with it because it's snippets of some of the best games, of all time, or at least like most foundational. And Ice Climbers is there.
Yeah, it's a shame because that was a perfect game for a live service format. They totally could have nailed it and said, this week we're adding Super Metroid challenges because we're adding Super Nintendo games to this thing. It could have been a really big Switch Online thing, but they just went kind of a more traditional route with it. Yeah, but I bet it still made money, even though it didn't crack 1 million. I bet that game cost next to nothing to develop. So I bet it was still a success. Yeah. And then I think that's all the sales numbers that I had. The other last two notes I have on this thing, I love how much we can pull out of these financial reports. I have a blast on these weeks. Nintendo talked about its environmental goals, which I found really interesting of them to talk about here. And there was just a few bullet points like trying to reduce the packaging and components that it takes to make and ship one of these things, which I've noticed, by the way, the OLED box is way more compact than the original Switch box was. I've seen that change happen. And they talked about really working on repairs and consumer support to extend the life of the product so people aren't needing to buy a new one when there's breaks. They can continue to maintain and upkeep the ones that people already have. And they talked about energy conserving product design and use of renewable energy. So, Justin, I don't know. I just thought this was a nice note that they threw in there and interesting to see from them.
Yeah, and I think it reflects a big trend in corporate culture of prioritizing things like environmental goals and things like that. And it's a combination of like as cynical as we can be, like a lot of, these folks do care about these things. At the same time, it is shown to have a pretty strong track record of consumers liking that stuff and caring about that stuff and that stuff mattering. And I love that they mentioned specifically doing things like repairs and extending the life of devices. Honestly, like the current crop of Nintendo hardware is pretty repairable. If you are very handy and a little bit bold and don't mind screwing up your warranty if you still have it. You can do a lot of repairs yourself without it being major surgery. There are like online fix-it places that, your results may vary, so do your research, but they can be pretty good. And sending stuff back to Nintendo, it wasn't that long ago that so they'll do cutoffs for like how far back they'll do repairs on their hardware, but it's pretty far back. And so you can have some like old handhelds and things like that, and depending on exactly what it is, what generation it is, they'll still repair it for you if you send it to them, which I think is
they
great.
did end. They ended 3DS and Wii U earlier this year, so now it's just Switch. But that was a long time that it was everything, and you might still be able to do 3DS and Wii U. It was basically like we're shutting down making new parts for these, so we will continue to repair until we're out. So I don't know where they're at with that, but yeah, still that was 11 yeyears after launch that they were still repairing these things, which is pretty good.
A launch that wasn't that successful, like there weren't that many Wii U's out there. The fact that they were supporting them for that long at all is like amazing.
Well, in terms of the handles, the fact that there's just so many different models they had to have different parts for, even if just aesthetically, so that they're the right colors on the different versions and stuff.
Yeah.
And then my last note here is this is something we predicted the price for Switch 2 last week, and this is something worth thinking about as we approach that. Nintendo lost 22.4 billion yen, which is, after conversion, 115 million US dollars, just due to foreign currency exchange against the yen. I don't know how closely all you listening to this are following this, but the yen is pretty much historically weak right now. It is so bad over there. Justin, we just talked about it the other night. You were just in Japan. You can buy a $70 video game for $41 after conversion in Japan right now. It's almost 2 to 1, the dollar to the yen. It's insane right now.
I was going to say, I think it's like I checked today, it was like 0.64 or 64 cents is the equivalent to 1 yen, I think is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Or 100 yen, because but essentially
or 100 yen, whatever it is, but
a dollar.
thing. Right.
Yeah. And so that is something that Nintendo's thinking about when they're thinking about how to price things in other markets, because they don't want to lose a bunch of money on this stuff because their country's currency is struggling.
Can I do my tinfoil hat that I shared this morning?
Yes.
New President-elect Donald Trump, has talked a lot about instituting tariffs, right? So any foreign goods that are coming into the country, there would be like a 20% tax rate that would be applied to a foreign nation that is trying to import goods from their country into the United States. And the goal is that, we would manufacture those goods in the United States. That way that problem goes away. And it's like you're helping create jobs in the US and all that. Okay. Nintendo is a Japanese company. Foxconn, which is a company in China, creates all of their products. So it stands to reason that, and we don't know whether or not Nintendo is going to move anything. My tinfoil hat is that they haven't announced the Switch successor along with the price of it, because they were waiting to see who was going to be elected president of the United States. Now that they know, they can have a game plan of, okay, this is what this thing is probably going to have to be priced at because the yen is so weak, and now we have a tariff that we have to deal with. So there's a very good chance that the next Switch is going to be the most expensive Nintendo console that we've ever seen.
I was thinking earlier, should I mention the fact that I void my price prediction if there's a tariff on the Switch? That's all I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. And obviously it's not in place yet. And whatever. Yeah, I think it's going to be expensive. I think it is.
We'll see.
And all the American politics stuff aside, just the yen fact alone, I think this thing's going to be priced higher here than it is over there. Yeah. So that's interesting to follow, because the yen, it's starting to rebound a little bit, but it's been bad for well over a year and a half now. 2 years, it has been just in the dumps. And not changing. And Nintendo's losing over $100 million because of it. They're doing well, but their profit's down, and a lot of it's because of this. And that's something completely out of their control.
It's nothing they can do. It's just,
Yep. So that is Nintendo's financials. Wow, we got a lot out of that. That was fun. We got one question from Red who asks, hello, Boardroom. With Nintendo coming out and saying that the next Nintendo console is going to be backwards compatible, do you think we are close to getting a reveal? At this point, I feel like it's almost too late with the holidays being right around the corner and them not wanting to mess with that. I just wanted to get your thoughts. My thought was that they announced to help with holiday sales, or maybe the people that are on the fence about buying games with the new system right around the corner. Or are they just going to keep dropping little hints of info piece by piece? Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Keep up the great work. Favorite podcast of the week. Thanks so much, Red. Justin, what do you think?
I like the idea of it being piece by piece reveal. In 2 weeks, we'll get a message that says this is for Okawa. It will have 2 thumbsticks, and then we'll just build from there little by little. No, if you look back at some of their previous shows, one of the things that I think we all echoed was that if they do a reveal during the holiday season, it would do really well to bundle that with backwards compatibility so that folks know that if they buy stuff, it will be compatible on the new system so as not to cannibalize sales. They've done that part of the equation, but they haven't revealed the hardware yet. I think realistically, if they are going to reveal the hardware, it'll be in these next couple of weeks. It'll be before the end of November. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's going to happen in December for a lot of reasons. And if for no other reason, then like if you've held out till December, just hold out for a few weeks till it's after Christmas because there's no harm in doing that, and you're probably strategically better off for it. So I think we're down to the last window of a 2024 reveal being reasonable, I think, at this point.
How about you, Chris?
I think it comes down to what I said previously. January, President Trump will enter office, and then depending upon what happens there, that will determine. I think they're going to have. I think they're beholden to their shareholders, where they have to show this thing off by the end of March. But I think they're trying to hold out as long as they can. If that gets put in place, like day one, then I think you'll see this thing in February. I think if it doesn't happen by then, I think it's by like the last week of March. I think that is what's driving that at this point.
Yeah, I think it's next year at this point. I think that if I look at their calendar right now, they have a January game with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which I just laugh every time we bring up. And now they have a March game with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. They don't have a February game. They usually have a February Direct. I could see it. I could see February being the time at this
I thought
point.
That earlier too, yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms of what you said, Red, about you think it's close because they just confirmed backwards compatibility, I think you shouldn't read into that as trying to read tea leaves to predict timing for a reveal, but rather that this was a shareholders meeting, and that's the only reason we heard about it, is because they confirmed to shareholders this thing will be backwards compatible, because shareholders are worried about the transition, because Nintendo hasn't always had the best transitions, so Nintendo is starting to show off the plans they're putting in place now. And they talked about the importance of the Nintendo account and the importance of retaining their base, and one of those bullet points was this backwards compatibility fact. So it wasn't a breadcrumb for the fans about Switch 2. Primarily, it ended up serving as that, but first and foremost, it was for the shareholders. Same reason we even heard about this thing, 6 months ago when they said, we're announcing it this fiscal year. That was for the shareholders, and then by proxy, it was for us. So, yeah, I wouldn't read into it too much. I think we're kind of in a holding pattern at this point, which is fine, because you got Mario and Luigi to play for 35 hours. So, there's plenty to keep you busy between now and then. Yeah. All right, let's talk about another game you can play right now, which is Metal Slug Tactics. Justin, you reviewed Metal Slug Tactics. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so hopefully by the time this podcast is out, you'll see it up on GameSpot.com. Metal Slug Tactics is it's sort of a hybridization. You take the classic run-and-gun Metal Slug. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a funnier Contra Contemporary. And they turn it into a turn-based strategy game, kind of a grid-based turn-based strategy, which is a lot of fun. But it also incorporates a sort of looping roguelike, or roguelite rather, base to it. So effectively what happens is you start a run, you go through a couple of missions in an area. After you complete three levels in an area, you have a boss fight, then you can go to the next area, on, and when you die or fail your objectives, you get sent back to camp. The translation of it using kind of that 3D, 2D art style to make it, 3D versions of kind of pixel graphics looks awesome if you've ever seen Metal Slug and you've seen the like hairy, skinny, like POW dudes you rescue and stuff. They're in there and they look great. So much of the things look sort of exactly like you would picture if you could go into that 2D plane and pan things around, how things would look. Like the Metal Slugs themselves are these like really janky tanks that are hilarious. They're in there. And so like that aspect of it is really good. And the turn-based battle system is good. You go in with a squad of 3 soldiers, and you can unlock more as you play through the game, and then you can choose which ones you go into battle with. And they each have their own set of unique weapons and abilities. So like, one guy might have guns, which can, shoot in a straight line. Somebody else might have grenades, which can go over obstacles and, will explode in multiple directions where they land. And the thing that makes it really kind of clever, really fun, and I think they have something like this in kind of like this, like Into the Breach. You can set up these sync shots. So if one person lands a shot on somebody from your team that is in a position where somebody else could also hit them with their attack. So like picture 2 people with guns and somebody intersecting the middle, or somebody with a gun and then somebody in the next column over with a grenade. As soon as one attack hits, the next attack hits, and that doesn't consume that other person's turn. So you can set up these like really elaborate plays where you get like 3 attacks for every single turn, and when you do, it feels genius. You think you're the smartest person of all time. You do a ton of damage,
Nice.
and you can clear the board really quickly. Oh, it's so much fun, and like the boss fights are totally flip it on its head, because you end up fighting these big giant, like a giant battleship at one point, or this big giant like underground tunneling snake robot. Again, if you're a big fan of the Metal Slug series, these are like callbacks to like prior boss and things like that. And then like they'll have giant health bars, and they'll introduce mechanics like having to take cover when they wipe out the map, and enemies will keep spawning. And it's hard. They are difficult encounters, and I really like that aspect of it. However, here's the but. The rogue-like side of the equation is where it falters. And frankly, I wish this were just a pure RTS. Because what happens is when you go into runs and you complete missions and objectives and stuff, you earn rewards that can do things like upgrade your weapons, upgrade your abilities, give you new abilities to do things like call in airstrikes and things like that. And you get the energy for that called adrenaline, basically by how much you move. So it also encourages you to be really mobile. How successful you're going to be on a run feels almost entirely dependent on luck. If you get bad rolls, you can't really strategy your way out of a lot of scenarios. And sometimes it's because the mission objectives are like, destroy this convoy, and you frankly just don't do enough damage to do it before you run out of turns. Or protect these NPCs who can get like one shot by certain types of enemies and things like that, and you can't take out the enemies quickly enough. And it feels bad. It's really unpleasant to go into a run, complete a couple levels, and have things not starting to come together and feel like the run is doomed and there's no shot you're going to clear it. And even that would be, I think, more okay if the post-run upgrades, so like the difference between a roguelike and a roguelite is that roguelites historically let you have incremental upgrades. Hades is a perfect example, right? You can upgrade your weapons based on things that you collect. The upgrades that you take back to camp, it's money, and you can unlock new abilities that can show up in the random pool. You won't necessarily get them, and they're not necessarily better. You can buy new weapon loadouts. Most of the weapon loadouts aren't better than your starting weapons. And there's not that many of them. It doesn't take a lot of runs before you buy them all. And so very quickly, you're doing runs that you know are doomed. And like I will say, like it wasn't that long before like I would play the first 2 or 3 missions in a run, and then I would decide if I was just going to quit and restart and hope I have better luck next time, or try and stick it out. And it's such a bummer because as an RTS, it's so much fun. And when you do get good rolls and you do have like a really good arsenal, it feels really good to go through it, and then you clear it and then you get sent back to the start. And so ultimately it's really, really strong in one area and held back in another. I still think overall it's a fun game, and it's one worth playing. And I've played it in both like controller controls and keyboard and mouse, and both work extremely well. But it's one where like I think its potential is wasted in its is wasted by those roguelite elements that don't come together.
If they were to integrate, let's say like a 1.5 or whatever, like update, like free update to it, and they made it more of a roguelike, do you think that could like totally change the landscape of it? Like just improve the experience overall?
Yeah, so, when we were talking a little bit about the new Mario and Luigi game, right? One of the things that I asked was about sort of like what, like the bones, right? Like the things that are there and what that could potentially be. This is a game that has great bones and would not have to change that much, in my opinion, in order to be exceptional, because it is really good in the areas where it's really good. And the areas where it's weak, it's like it holds it back, but I don't think it needs to change that much to be a lot better. I think if it can fix those rogue elements, and for the most part, that means either tuning it so that even with just absolute terrible rolls, you can clever your way to the end if you're really good, or giving you more control in the upgrade area or building your loadouts and things like that so you can set yourself up for success. I think it's a much better game.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I feel like with the roguelite genre, in action roguelites, even if you get a bad roll, you can skillfully play your way out of it. And in a strategy game, I can't wrap my head around how that works, because you have what you have, and that sounds like that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And, I can play, old, really hard Fire Emblem games and be in bad situations on the map, and I can strategy my way out of it. I can stop and pause and think. And if I'm being really hardcore, I can grab a little piece of paper and a pencil and sketch something out and come up with a strategy and a plan. And you can do that a little bit to try and set up those sync attacks, but there's just too many times where, frankly, the math just isn't there, which is an unfortunate phrase right now. And you are, and you feel stuck. Like the number of times where like I get to the boss and I'm like, I don't have any of what I would need to beat this, and I know they're gonna do this attack that's gonna clear this chunk of the map, and I can't run and gun my way to the other side and also chip away at damage at the same time, and it's like it feels bad, and it's like it's still a good game. Like I want to stress that this is still a good game. My disappointment in it is that I think there's an exceptional game in there, and it missed.
So can you share your score? Because you're not sure if the review's up yet?
Review should be up by the time that you hear this. I gave it a 7. And again, it's a good game. And it is one that I think that it is worth playing. And I think when it is clicking and is good, it is extremely fun. Nice. And I think if you can learn when to just call it and be like, no, this run sucks, you can sort of like tilt it towards the fun more often, but luck's got to be on your side.
And did you play it on Switch, or do you not know what the Switch version's like?
So I have not played it on Switch, but that being said, I actually played it in a lot of different PC configurations.
Okay.
Both so I played it on my ultra powerful rig. I played it in a I played it on a very, very old, very low spec laptop, and it ran really well, actually. And I was really impressed by how well it ran. For the purposes of the review, they asked us not to play it on the Steam Deck, so I'm not going to comment on what that experience is like.
Interesting.
And I think, just to peel back the curtain, a lot of times, there's a launch update that will just like fixes bugs and things like that. And so sometimes certain hardware configurations, it can be based on things like that, right? Like the Steam Deck compatibility, not being a hardware spec issue, it being just a
button mapping is wrong or something like that.
Something like that. So don't read into that at all. Just know that
it's a very common ask. I've seen it with several games I've seen codes roll in for. So it's not like, wow, that means it runs bad on Steam Deck. No, it's a really
not
common
what that means at all.
days.
Yeah, and
no,
so
it's just
I have a lot of faith that it will run extremely well on a lot of specs.
Sure.
And so I wouldn't have any performance concerns with it.
No,
Cool.
the reason I reacted that way is it seems like a game that is poised to do very well on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
So you would think that they would I would think in a review cycle, they would want that to be like at the forefront of like, we expect people to buy this thing to play it on the Steam Deck. So like, go have at it.
And I will say, like, feet up on the couch with a Switch in your hands, like chipping away at this, and then like restarting runs when you need to, where you got like good TV in the background, you got the ball game going. That sounds amazing, and that's a great setup for this. And like, because like the story is it's Metal Slug, it's goofy. Oh, you know what? There is one other issue that I do bring up in my review that I do want to point out here as well, and that is anytime this is something that goes back to the legacy of this game, and it's because these enemies have been around for a long time. But there's like 4 different biomes, a couple of them are deserts, and to me, it's a little bit shocking for it to be the year 2024 and to do this war game where I'm calling in airstrikes and things like that. And they put me in the desert and they put a turban on everybody and a saber in everybody's hands, and their complexion changes. And then you go to the jungle biome and all of the enemies are wearing these masks. Well, not all of them, because they mix in some of the soldiers too, but a lot of the enemies now suddenly have masks on and are throwing spears. And like their units are referred to as either native or indigenous. What are we doing, guys? It is completely unnecessary, especially because like there's so much in these games where they use like ridiculous, like janky technology to make these giant robots and things like that. And you do fight things like zombies in the series historically, and like they get fantastical and creative. And there's so many, you do fight some mutants in this, and that's really cool and clever and fun design. It's totally unnecessary to still tie them into like ethnic backgrounds and things like that. And it's an completely unforced error that hopefully they just don't do going forward.
Yeah, no, that's a really great concern to bring up. And to tie it back to Nintendo, it's a reason we won't see Advance Wars again, because I think they were uncomfortable with just the real world parallels, even in a game like that. And I just think it's something that in games like this, people should definitely learn to stay away from. How's the pixel art otherwise, though? Because this is a game that's looked really, really beautiful anytime I feel like we've seen it. So do you like how it turned out? Because we've known about this game forever.
It looks awesome. It looks great in motion. Characters have that like old like 16-bit like little like bounce and sway. And when you do things like their special attacks, they're just a very quick like kind of full screen animation where you see the characters. They look really cool there. And so like it does that great thing where it's like zoomed out when they're small. They're kind of like limited in detail, and then you get the like very detailed like pixel art of them when it's up close. And the characters are cool, and they do such a good job building in so much personality. Some of the characters that you can unlock actually come from the sister series Akari Warriors.
Cool.
And like utilize some of, so like instead of running around with guns, they have like knives and things because they're like Rambo based. And it does a lot of really cool stuff.
Nice. So that is Metal Slug Tactics. Go check out Justin's review on GameSpot. And it's on Nintendo Switch, and it's out now. Okay, we've run a little bit long, but I don't know. How about we treat the listeners and wrap up with our EGADS emails anyways? You guys down?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So we got 2 to get to. Jake emailed toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com, just like you can. Actually, no, Jake dropped this in the Discord, just like you can. You can do either one. We have a listener questions channel, and we have a email address you can drop in our inbox. But Jake asked, does it ever bother you that the models and movesets of characters in Smash Bros. Typically aren't related to that console's games? I understand the dev cycle and logistical reasons why this is the case, but it still bothers me that when I play Smash Ultimate on Switch, there is basically zero representation for the Switch's masterpieces. No Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom runes, no Cappy, no Dread Flash Shift or Aeon abilities, etc. Not only are these unique abilities absent from the movesets, there aren't even any skins or aesthetic nods. I hate to be the actually guy, but I will say Link does have his bomb runes from Breath of the Wild, and one of Mario's taunts is Cappy, but it's not a move set.
Yeah.
It's not a move, but it is one of his taunts. And then Luigi has his plunger grabber from Luigi's Mansion 3, which wasn't even out at the time that Smash Ultimate came out.
Yeah.
But I still see your point. Those are very minor exceptions to the problem you're talking about here. Okay, back to Jake. Barring Nintendo releasing Smash in the latter part of a console cycle, which seems unlikely, it's hard to imagine a solution, but here's my best shot. Super Smash Brothers Stance. I love this, by the way. Instead of just adding new characters until the character screen is like an eye test, group all variants under the character. Once you select the character, you can select the character variant stance or some other snappy term with different aesthetic movesets. When new games release, Nintendo can say, we're adding a stance for insert character here, and it can double as DLC that adds real depth to that character, but also as a way of promoting the new entry to that franchise. Personally, I would have preferred flagship character variants with unique movesets and abilities as DLC, as opposed to increasingly niche characters. Is anyone else with me? Jake, great question. This is the stuff I love to see roll in. Like, it's really well thought out. Awesome stuff. Chris, I'll start with you. What do you think of this kind of pitch that Jake made?
I mean, in a world where Sakurai is not like the only like messiah of Smash Brothers, yeah, I think we can absolutely do this. We look at I'll use this example because it's the one I'm probably the most familiar with, but Dragon Ball Fighters, there's like 6 Gokus in that game, and like they all control a little bit differently, but like it's also really great because it's like they are different to some extent. And it would make Smash more of a, I don't want to use the term live service because that term makes me want to throw up, but it makes the release of a new game like almost an event where, like, let's say Super Mario Wonder comes out, and this is a terrible example, but Super Mario Wonder comes out, and then a month later you get like, hey, here's a moveset of like all these different Wonder abilities. Elephant Mario, right? Like you get that as like that's his new Smash Ball thing, like a Smash Ball attack, or like mouthful mode with Kirby. Like after Kirby Forgotten Land, like all of a sudden you're just like turning into a car and like running people over or whatever. No, I think I've always wanted them to kind of do something like that with Smash, but I totally understand why they can't, because of how long the runway is on like trying to perfect what that game's experience is. And it also makes development of that game like completely endless. So I don't know who would want to do that for that long. I mean, there's some studios that do. We see lots of games out there that run for forever. Looking at you, Destiny. Not that you're doing that well, but I would love to see it. It would keep me coming back for sure. Because Smash Ultimate, even with as much content as it has, like it's not like I've gone back and played that game in the last like year and a half. I just haven't because there's nothing new there.
Yeah. Justin, what do you think?
I think after hearing Chris talk, I am so excited at the prospect of a Mario Wonder themed stage in a future Smash Brothers title.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's great.
But yeah, like honestly, I'm with Jake on this in so much as like when we do see those elements incorporating like the newest versions of things, I think is really cool and really exciting, and I think it's fun. The hard part is it's not always better. Like I don't actually like the remote bombs better than the old bombs on Link.
Yeah, same. Mm-hmm.
But like it's cool when we do those things, and I do think like Link is probably the poster child in Zelda for like the one with the variants, because you have Toon Link and Young Link and things like that, and I would love to see elements like that. Like Dragon Ball Fighters is a great example. Whatever the newest Dragon Ball game does the exact same thing, where you have like a million versions of the exact same character. They're all a little bit different. So taking aside the logistical challenges of it, which I think we all understand and Jake understands as well, I'm with you. I would love to see that stuff. I think it's really cool. And I think it helps make Smash feel distinct from the previous titles. A lot of people still play Melee. And and I think that's fine, and having characters show up and be a different take on them in a new Smash is cool. Yeah, like man, give me some Cappy powers. That sounds awesome. Let me possess somebody for a little bit.
Can I take it a step further and be the mod guy for a second? Like, so if you're not familiar with it, things to Google: Project M. That is a Super Smash Bros. Melee mod that will like contains a bunch of new characters. Or, I'm sorry, Brawl. Thank you, Brawl mod that you can actually play on an unmodded Wii. And like that adds new characters, new movesets, etc. And then Smash Remix for the N64 adds people like Goemon is in that game. Banjo-Kazooie's in that game. Conquer, Wario. So like there are communities out there that are kind of doing it for Nintendo because Nintendo has obviously moved on, but like it's also not the same of like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So extra.
Yeah, I'm really of two worlds of this because I can totally see what you're all talking about how cool this would be, but at the same time, I think I'm someone that just likes the toy box nature of Smash Brothers, and it is here's Piranha Plant. You added a Piranha Plant toy to your collection, and yeah, it's niche and weird and bizarre, but I like that. And even with the Fire Emblem characters, that not that many people care about that. I think I prefer that than two clones of Mario, and that's just my take. I can see either way. But then in terms of it being up to date, there's something I really like about characters being pulled from different moments in time of Nintendo history. When I look at the Zelda roster, I think it's so cool that Link is from Breath of the Wild, but Ganondorf's from Ocarina of Time, and Zelda is from A Link Between Worlds. That is such a niche pluck that I obviously adore, and I think that to me is cooler and more special than this homogenized, okay, it's Breath of the Wild Link, it's Breath of the Wild Zelda, and it's Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf. That to me is just, okay, it starts to feel even more like a commercial than Smash Brothers already even does sometimes. And I think there's a reverence for all eras of Nintendo history in Smash Brothers that Sakurai's the perfect man to lead because he cares more about Nintendo and video game history than maybe anybody else on this planet. And I just think you'd lose something if it became, okay, new Nintendo game's out, time to make the character play exactly like that. So I like it how it is now. That being said, though, I do think that because Ultimate was so focused on everybody's here and getting as many new things in as possible, there's been some neglect to some of the characters who have been around forever. Like Mario, he still has the cape from Mario World. There's been so many games since Mario World and so much new stuff he could be doing, but it's still the cape. It's still Flood from Sunshine. It's been like that.
Do we need the Flood, really?
No, we don't. Like Dr. Mario is better than regular Mario in Smash. I hope we all can recognize that.
Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just do think that there's been, and with how crazy some of the DLC got, Hero has his command menu, Kazuya and Terry power up after they cross 100%. Steve they had to rework every stage just to make him work, right? They put so much work into the new characters that you can feel when you're playing a character if their bones are from 2001 in Smash Brothers Melee or 2018 in Smash Brothers Ultimate. And I think it's led to some weird imbalanced feelings with a friend comes over, they've never played. Who do you play as? Well, you should play as Mario. You shouldn't play as Hero. You'll have no idea what the heck you're doing. And so if I'm to make a wish list for the next Smash Brothers, it's to give some love to the old characters. Yeah, modernize them a bit, but I don't personally need it to go as far as every time a game comes out, you time it. Because, yeah, logistically, that's impossible. That sounds like a nightmare because they plan out Smash Brothers in pre-production. They know who they're going to add, when they're going to add them. To time that with AAA video game development in the 2020s, it sounds like the biggest headache you could possibly have. So, I just don't think it's logistically possible, but I like the concept, though. But, yeah, modernize some of these movesets. Why is Kirby still using, like, Final Cut? Or what is that? What even is that move? Like, come on. Yeah, give them some new stuff. So, yeah, awesome question, though. That was a fun discussion. I'm always down to talk Smash. And then this last one's not a question, but it came from Christian, who emailed toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com, who said, I just wanted to say that I love your show. It's a highlight of my week. And Christian goes on to say very nice things about all of us, which I don't need to read here. We got them for ourselves. But thank you so much for Christian for sending that in. And Christian wraps up with, together you guys make a great show. I love how you all have varying opinions at times, but you are respectful and represent your views well. I appreciate the time and thought you put into your content. Keep up the good work. Christian, thanks so much. And I threw that in here just because it's been a brutal week, like, for many reasons. It's tough out there, and I know a lot of our listeners are feeling the same way.
It's only Wednesday,
Chris?
Lemon.
What a week.
What a week.
Yeah, I know. But Monday was crazy because of all the review stuff, and then
the 5 heard around the world.
Yes, exactly. The 5 heard around the world, and then Tuesday was a million times worse for much larger, much more important reasons. And so, yes, wanted to shout out our community because we just have amazing people in the community. And like, I love you guys, Justin and Chris. I love our listeners, and just, yeah, it's a nice reprieve. And to be able to do this show that's gone on much longer, and hopefully you enjoy the longer runtime of this week. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys and everyone that listens. And yeah, just wanted to shout that out. And thanks, Christian, for sending in some positivity. That's super appreciated.
Seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and that is another episode of the Toadstool Boardroom. In the books, we're a weekly Nintendo show here on Thursdays on audio services like Spotify and Apple Podcast and many others, with a video version over on YouTube. You can email the show toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at ToadstoolBR, although I think I'm about to jump ship for good. I think I'm done. I don't think I'm going to be there much longer, and our show probably won't be either. And you can follow us on Blue Sky at Toadstool Boardroom. I'm going to mess that up forever. I have my routine. But yeah, Blue Sky at Toadstool Boardroom. Send us an email, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. Justin, where can people find you?
Find me on Blue Sky at KOREIS. You can check out my review on GameSpot. Again, should be up by the time that you guys listen to this. You probably won't see any written pieces about me for a couple of weeks. I'm working on a couple of bigger, deeper pieces. They're going to be extremely cool, hopefully, when they're done. So I'll let you know when those come around.
Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me at Shrives93 all over the internet.
You can find me at Logan J. Plant for now on Twitter. We'll see for how long. And at Blue Sky, I just got to get in the habit of using it. It's hard to change my routine. It's been like 10 years, so I'm working on it. But find me on Blue Sky at Logan J. Plant. One more time, find the show on Blue Sky at Toadstool Boardroom. Go check out my Mario and Luigi Brothership review. Maybe leave a nice comment to wade through all the people talking about Concord for some inexplicable reason. I couldn't tell you why the heck that's what they're choosing to do, but it sure is.
Actually read the review and even watch the video.
Yes, please. Thanks so much. The 5 heard around the world. Yeah, and then I'll shout out a Nintendo voice chat this week, which I think most people who listen to this show also listen to, but I'm going to be talking about Brothership there, and I'm trying to mix it up. I'm going to be talking about some slightly different things with it, so go check out that episode this Friday. And come back to the Toadstool Boardroom next week, because I'm playing a Switch game right now that I love. I love it so much, and I'm excited to talk about it next week. But for now, that's all the time I've got. I got to get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great week. We'll catch you next time right here in the Toadstool Boardroom.